Welcome to episode 35 of Seize the Moment podcast. Happy New Year, everybody. And since it's the new year, thinking, why don't we start off the talk with New Year's resolutions?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions, Leon?
So, the one I was thinking about, since guys, we came up with this topic pretty much like, I don't know, a few days ago. So the one I was...
On New Year's?
Yeah, was it New Year's that we came up with it?
Yeah. We were at a house party. It was really cool. It was actually supposed to be 6 people showing up there.
Yeah.
And somehow it became like 20-something people. And it became a really good night.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, damn. So I guess it was on New Year's. Okay. So New Year's is the time that we came up with the episode. So yeah, I was thinking about it. And so as obviously you know, and kind of our audience knows too, right? So I'm an existential writer, right? So for me, yeah, right? So for me, sort of authenticity and kind of being real and genuine is really important to me, right? And so even though I write a lot about this stuff, right, because it is super important to me, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that I actualize, I guess very often, whatever that means. So for me, the idea is just like to pretty much to put myself out there more, right? And we're going to get into, kind of like what that means and obviously how do we actualize that, but it's putting myself out there more and just being more honest and open about kind of my experiences, my feelings, stuff I'm going through, stuff I went through, and just like, kind of, I guess pushing back against the fear of the, criticism or feedback that others would give me. What about you? Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Thank you.
That's pretty good. So, yeah, for me, it's more of a thing of time management.
Okay.
One thing I noticed last year, so what ended up happening, which is actually very good for me, I got a job that I'm actually very happy with and satisfied with, which is very cool. However, the problem with, and my job is kind of like the 9 to 5 sort of thing.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time out of your day. Now, before I had this job, I had a lot of free time to work with. Be able to, like, and my interest was always like stuff like self-help books or video seminars or actually going to a seminar, meeting different people in groups, stuff like that, and just kind of being like a autodidact and just keep learning, right? Learn, and make time for that. And when I had even like a whole free day, I would waste time, of course, but since I had a whole day to do something, maybe 3 hours of that day, I'll be dedicating to actually learning something, right? Now, with the new schedule last year, one thing I noticed is I still carved out time to do stuff like that, but it wasn't what it was before. And I still have a lot of things that I really, really want to dive into and learn. And it's not something that I really can... I don't want to take a month to read a book, for example. It's not that it's too long, but sometimes even when you don't engage with something every single day or for a certain amount of time a day, you don't really work with it and get really deep into it, to the degree where you'll actually be able to think about what it is that you're reading and learn from it, because you have to kind of ask questions about what you're reading and things like that. You can't just read, put it down, come back to it, read again and all that. You have to really work with what you're reading in order to internalize what's there. So my New Year's resolution is to learn to manage my time better, to carve out time in such a way that I really have time for these sorts of things.
Okay.
And of course, also time for friends, to hang out with friends, time for a relationship and stuff like that. But yeah, there are these things that I still want to learn and do, and I have to figure out how to do it with the time I have currently, and then also maybe even explore an option of changing how I already use my time. For example, let's say, so I like the job, but maybe, who knows, maybe I should be open to a different one, or maybe something else where I do something on my own, or in a team or something, and who knows, but that's just pure speculation. That's one New Year's resolution, time management.
All right. You have more? Okay.
Yeah. Other ones are just more like, try to just maybe meditate. Bless you.
First sneeze of the episode.
Some people say in some cultures, actually, when you sneeze, it means it's the truth that the other person was saying. So but anyway, so, yeah, exploring, like, being more present to the moment. There are times in my life where I've been very present, and then there's times in my life like actually there were times this past year where I felt very challenged to stay present. Like I would have certain it's getting really deep now, but I would have certain thoughts, like intrusive thoughts, let's say when I'm taking the train in the morning or something like that, that I never experienced before. I always had a very like...
Oh, is this social anxiety?
No. Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Was it about people, though?
Yeah, for example,
Okay.
like if somebody's rubbing up against me on the train or something like that, is it anxiety, though? It's not like it's not a fear, it's more like something like I would have like an intrusive thought like of... and I don't want to admit this because here's the thing, I don't identify with it, but it was a struggle because I'm like, whoa, where is this coming from? Because it almost makes you want to identify with such a thing. But I'd be like, if somebody rubbed against me, I'd be a little like pissed off or something for a second.
Oh, so it's not fear to anger?
No, yeah, like weird little things like that, and things I never had before in my life.
Oh, you're personalizing.
Yeah, but I also, the moment I noticed it, I'd be like, what the hell are you thinking? And then kind of distance myself from it. But my issue was that I didn't even have things like that happen at all.
Did you know by any chance, well, maybe you do, obviously, but do you know that actually most people have those? So,
Of
like, the
course,
automatic
yeah.
thoughts. So, for me, I literally, and, like, I guess this is kind of, being authentic, right? So... Oh shit, like this is such a great opportunity for this. So like I mean, guess whatever, I could tell everybody now. So I have to like remind myself about, I don't know, 10 to 20 times in a day not to be an asshole. Because like there are things that happen and I just want to like say something or do something. I'm like, nope, don't be an asshole. Nope, don't do that. Don't think that. Don't do that. And I'm like always kind of bouncing back and forth between like automatic thoughts where I'm like hypercritical of someone, where I'm mad at someone for something stupid, and then I have to step back and I'm like, nope, don't be an asshole. And then I have to sometimes kind of walk myself through why I shouldn't be an asshole. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, you know, I'm happy that you're admitting some of that, or even I said what I said a second ago, because honestly, back in the day when I had started doing things like Ego Ends Now and all that, I mean, of course, I adhered to, you know, the core principle, you want to be authentic, right? But at the same time, there was like a certain image that I tried to put out there of like this, like, not idolic figure. I'm not trying to say that. Like somebody who is like unreactive, someone who doesn't let things get to them, all that. And I felt like if I said to anyone that I had other kinds of things that like an issue or something that I'm working on, that I wasn't this person worthy of talking about how to get over these things or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that's actually more relatable if you say that you're actually on your own journey trying to either self-actualize or, you know, be better.
Yeah.
And also that, you know, you don't say like, oh, I'm this perfect enlightened figure or whatever.
I'm definitely not.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? I'm sure, though, that there have been moments in your life of complete lucidity where you have been, like, at some sort of peak of, you know, just like some sort of state that you could have been in, right? Or a flow state, let's say, right? But to maintain stuff like that is, I don't know how realistic it is. There are probably people who dwell in those kinds of states more often than not, or for a certain percentage of time longer than the average person. All I can say for myself is that I am better than I used to be. So I try to just compare myself to how I was before.
Yeah. And it's
you
like,
know, as far as that goes.
And I think the other thing that tries to, or at least I used to try to help myself, is that I remind myself that, look, man, sometimes, well, the whole thing of being an asshole, it's never about the person, right? So that I already know. And then the other thing is that I have to kind of remind myself that I get up pretty cranky in the morning. I'm not a morning person. Sometimes I wake up like with tension headaches or stomach aches, right, because of anxiety overnight. Yeah, it's like a thing. So, like,
I didn't know this.
Yeah, man, it sucks. So it's like when I'm on the train.
Everyone listening is like, what the fuck, for real?
Yeah. So it's like when I get up in the morning, right, and like, I don't know, somebody does something on the train or whatever, like, you know, what I can't stand is when people walk slow in front of me. Oh, that drives me crazy. But then I have to remind myself, I'm like, okay, this is a community, right? The sidewalk doesn't belong to me. I am not entitled to have this person walk, like, you know, whatever, 5, 6, 7 steps ahead of me. So the point is that, like, sometimes when our biologies are what we are, and, like, you know, we're feeling like shit, where it's very easy for us to be in bad moods, and then obviously or, like, let's say, feel, like, irritable, feel annoyed, like, frustrated, right? And then it's easy for us to kind of see the world through that kind of lens.
Yeah, so it's because of things like that like I I could respect. I know there's a cliche to New Year's resolutions. They're like, hey man, like if you wanted to decide to do something new, you should just do it now as soon as you were thinking about it. Don't wait for New Year or something. But that, there's nuance to that, right? Like it's not necessarily about when do you start or anything like that, or sometimes it provides a structure in people's heads. I've had moments in my life, like maybe 2 years back, or even maybe last year.
Yeah.
No. Oh yeah, 2 years back, I said to myself, I'm gonna go to the gym every single day.
That's wild.
And I did, almost.
I bet.
I have a graph actually of like how many times I was there.
Can I guess what can I map it out for you just to take a guess what that was like for you?
Sure.
Okay, so this is what I think happened. So you were here, right? And then you went up here. And then you did this, and then boom! There was a big drop off somewhere.
Nope.
No, really?
No.
That's what usually happens. That's so interesting.
No. Well, no, I've had that before.
Yeah.
It wasn't in that not that recent one. It was actually like a firm commitment, actually. But yeah, no, you're right. I've definitely experienced that where like for like a month everything's looking good. All of a sudden it completely drops off. I go back to my old habits or something like that.
Lot.
And then maybe even 10 times hard dwell in like my old habits or something. I've had that before.
Yeah.
But I've used like the suffering from that to kind of leverage doing the right thing. It just took a lot of trial and error, you can say, something like that.
Yeah.
And then enough of like, how much are you willing to kind of like put up with from yourself. And then for me, I was like, come on, I'm getting older. As soon as like I was like, I'm going to be 28 soon. Like I imagine when I was younger, at 28, I forgot where I heard this. It may not be true currently. But I heard a long time ago, 28 is like like a man's prime physically.
Okay, maybe.
And then some people would say no because they're like, no, you're probably more fit and stronger in your earlier 20s or something like that.
Maybe.
But something about 28, I heard like that's when you fully grow into yourself. Like something about like how you're going to be for the rest of your life is, I don't know, it's magical number 28, right? Whatever. I had that thought in the back of my head for a long time.
Right.
And as I was approaching that number, I'm like, wow, you've been like looking, and good job, Alan. You've been looking at self-help stuff since like 8. There are probably things that people haven't looked at that you were looking at, and it's fantastic. Good for you. You accessed this like, I forgot how Emmy called it. Like it's some arcane secrets, something like that.
I don't remember, but
she said like we don't have access to hidden arcane knowledge. So,
okay, I got you. No, I got the meaning.
Yeah. So I was like, oh yeah, it's just fantastic. But I didn't, and many times I did act on it, but in such a way where I didn't fully dive in, like in terms of even executing and like taking action. Like there were a lot of things that I would just kind of play with, like gain knowledge and theory, and be like, oh, I have more knowledge and more theory, and now I look at the world differently. So, and I used to be like, this is what I used to think. I used to think that if I change my view on the world, my experience of how I perceive everything will change, and my relationship to everything will change, which is actually true.
Yeah, but it's just very hard.
But here's the thing: even if you accomplish having a perspective shift, it doesn't mean that. So you also have to take action, though. Yeah. Even a perspective shift, like an internal mental, like even if you went from everyone is an enemy to everyone's okay to everyone is my friend or something like that. Maybe based on how you think about that, maybe that'll change like certain things you automatically do and how you talk to people. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to actually go and talk to someone. You still have to go and do the work of like...
It just makes it easier.
Yeah.
Oh, so since you bring this up, what's interesting? Shit. I kind of feel bad for forgetting the name because I think these guys, or the person who has this podcast deserves so much credit. Crap. Now I'm going to feel like a dick.
It's not Rogan?
No, it's not Rogan. So Daniel Kahneman, obviously the famous cognitive psychologist. So, damn, he was on this podcast recently. And I feel so bad because I'm like going to mention this and I'm going to talk about the guy, whatever. Okay, so he was on this podcast recently, and he said something that was really profound, and I mean, pretty much something that I guess therapists and philosophers have known for ages, but like for I guess people who don't really study it don't really know. So he said that like as common people, we make the mistake of trying to push someone into something, right? So it's like what you're talking about is actually Kahneman's view of psychology and what it's supposed to be. So he says for the most part, right? So let's say people have tension, right? So they have anxiety, or let's say, or just anxiety or resentment, or just some sort of aversion to doing the action, whatever it is, right? And he's like, but what we do is we're like, no, you now have to do this, right? Here are all these reasons why this will be beneficial for you. Do it, right? They put pressure on them, right? And sometimes they say, well, I'll be happy if you do it, or I need you to do it, right? Pressure, pressure, pressure. So what happens is, or what the likely outcome is, on the one hand, the person already starts out with not wanting to do the thing, whether they're anxious about it, whether it's just not something that they're motivated to do, whether it's a combination of the two, whether it's something that maybe if they did do it would make them, let's say, resentful of having to do it or whatever, even some combination of factors. And then you have this other person who's like, no, you have to do it, right? So they put more pressure on them. And then so what happens when there's all of this tension, right? When there's sort of on the one hand, the tension of, let's say, the desire to kind of avoid, right? The desire to sort of not engage in the activity. And then on the other hand, there's now all of this pressure, right? Those tensions, they kind of merge. Mm-hmm. And what happens is the person now wants to desperately avoid it, right? So they want to get away from the tension. So he says what we do is, it's actually the opposite of what you should be doing. So for people, what we do is, because it's so natural, it's the way we're raised, maybe there's some inherent biology here, unquestionable, but we're like used to just pushing people into things, right? To say like, no, you should do this, or here are these great reasons why, like just do it. And the other person's like, no, I don't want to, right? So what Kahneman says essentially is that he's like, we have to work on, he gave this really great metaphor where he said, like, think of it as something, I'm not going to give the metaphor because I'm going to butcher it and I don't really remember. But the point is, he says, rather than sort of to bring in, to sort of, to push forward, or rather to give forth another force, right? He says what you should be thinking about is taking away the force, right? Taking away the force that's sort of making that person want to avoid the action for whatever reason. So what you're doing is you're essentially saying like, hey, like let's work on this person's worldview, right? So if let's say person A, or whatever, the only person rather. So if let's say the person is essentially afraid of going out into the world and talking to people, right? What we want to do is like, so my natural reaction, like let's say you, right? You would want to, you're like, you think to yourself like, you know what? I want to start talking to people, right? And I'm like, oh, Alan, you should do it. Like, you should definitely do it, man. There's nothing to be afraid of. And you're like, no, but like, I don't know. I'm like, what if they say, no, they're not going to say that. Just go do it. But no, just look, bro, you're like a real pussy if you don't do it. You gotta do it. Just do it. Don't be a coward, right? And then, of course, what happens is you're like, now I want to avoid this person and I want to avoid the action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of, I guess it happens. Actually, to be honest, something like that might help someone. But yes. That's just an aside.
Yeah. So So Kahneman says it's not that it's like, it's not black and white, right? There are some people it definitely helps, but for the most part, in the majority, it doesn't. So what like a therapist or what he would have done is he would talk to like pretty much figure out what the anxiety is over, right? So he would try to help this person figure out like why is he anxious or she, and what is it about? Like let's say what is the evidence really indicating, right? Should they be anxious? Is their worldview of people correct, or rather the majority of people, right? Is it possible that they could be wrong? So they would go through this thinking process with them. Mm-hmm. So right, the sort of force that's holding them back is the anxiety, right? Another person sort of pushing them into it, calling them a coward, criticizing them, telling them that they're wrong. No, you're wrong. That's not going to happen. What do you do? Alan, no, you're stupid. They're going to be so nice to you. Look at you. You're great, right? And it's like all of that really goes nowhere because the criticism, the sort of the counter beliefs, it's not a person just because you say something is wrong doesn't necessarily mean a person is going to believe it. If I tell you, Alan, you're wrong and you're a coward if you don't do it, you're not going to, I mean, I'm assuming, right? You're not going to be like, wow, bro, you're so right. I didn't see that before. Right, so Kahneman essentially says that you have to take away a part, or at least, if not all of the force, but at least a part of that force, right? You have to help the person reduce the anxiety. And so through criticism, and obviously through even just, counter beliefs or counter facts, whatever you want to call them, right? That doesn't work, right? You have to actually go through the process of what is preventing this person from doing this particular thing. And the idea is, in the topic that we're going to cover, right, risk aversion, this is going to take some risk, right? So because the idea is that a lot of times it doesn't work. If you're trying to change a person's worldview, you have to come in knowing that there's a high risk that it won't work. There's a high risk and there's a high chance that it won't work. So it's like, are you willing to sort of put your effort and put your energy into this person's worldview? And pretty much how important is it to you that person change? Because if you're just trying to sort of force them into something, it ain't going to happen.
Well, yeah, but you also have to get them to buy into the idea that it's worthwhile taking the risk.
Yes.
And I think that how you get them to do that is, I think it differs person to person. Mm-hmm. But actually, Sometimes, so actually that thing where you call somebody like, oh, you're a coward or something like that, depending where a person is,
That's true.
That actually might be enough motivation for them to try something new. Especially depending on their values. It's like, I'm not a coward. He's calling me a coward because of this.
That's true.
I'm going to prove I'm not. You know, and they might. Another person, sometimes you actually just need to explain to them why it's worthwhile. Like, what are the pros and cons, or what are the pros and cons. Like, if you had to say, what are the pros and cons of not taking this risk, and what are the pros and cons of taking this risk, and really breaking it down. So kind of that cognitive thought record.
Yeah. Which is technically Socratic questioning. That's why I fucking love Socrates. I think the concept of Socratic questioning is like the greatest thing in the world. What's like some of my favorite moments as a therapist is like so like let's say there's an answer that I have in mind sometimes for the person of what I want them to do or what I want them to think. But by the way, sometimes I'm wrong, right? So for me, my perspective is like, look, man, I want this person to get to this point, but the thing is I can also be wrong, and maybe there's another solution that's better for them. So when we go through kind of Socratic dialogue, sometimes the person is like, oh, like, wow, this is the right answer. And I'm like, see, I didn't tell you that. You figured that out on your own. But sometimes they find a different answer, and I'm like, wow. And they're like, wait, but you don't agree with that. And I say, no, you're right, I don't. But apparently that's what's right for you. So it's like you gotta kind of have to stand back and accept it. But my point is just overall, like cognitive thought record and Socratic questioning are pretty much the best methods we have to get somebody to sort of, I guess, become or live the best version of themselves.
Yeah, and also, how should I put this? Like, also another way to frame it too is, like, you know those motivational videos on YouTube, for example? So, for example, some of them that I've heard have this really cool thing that they put out there where it's just like, you know, how strong is your why? Like, what is your why? Or figure out what is your why. Like, what is your reason for even attempting to try to change something about yourself? And sometimes if it's very strong, it has a sort of gravity to it that'll sort of this is getting into a different realm out of like psychotherapy, but I'm sure this has a working capability, like somebody could use this. So the gravity of that purpose or of that why can create personal boundaries against behaviors that would otherwise keep you from successfully living that or successfully taking on that risk, or having the okay. So for instance, let's say my purpose is I would like to change what is the default narrative for humanity, which is, what the fuck does that mean, right? Which is like change what is the default like paradigm of the average person. So I'm not even saying like something like make everyone enlightened or whatever. My goal is something like, what is, how do you change like what is taught to people and normalized, what is made into something that's as simple as like a cultural thing that people just happen to agree with or know about, right? So, okay, how do I do something like that? It sounds like a very big thing, right? Well, not even how. Say I'm trying to do that. What kind of person would I have to be, or what kind of things would I have to do if I wanted to do that? I couldn't, for example, not do a podcast and not want to try to expose or say certain ideas and put them out there, right? If before I had a fear of doing that, and I did, my fear was I didn't feel like I was qualified to even have an opinion, right?
Wow.
No, because I figure you have to be like, for instance, like for people to listen to you, you have to be like somebody who's like icon level, like somebody like a Tony Robbins, Richard Branson, a Sam Harris, a Joe Rogan,
a Miley Cyrus. I'm kidding.
A Miley Cyrus, right? That's funny. Wow. But like, yeah, like, you have to, like you have to be someone who already has some sort of renown about them, or something like that. And there probably is some truth to that. It's not like I just came up with that, but it's also like an excuse not to take action. I was being risk averse because of all these excuses I had. But then when I really aligned myself with what is my why, what is my purpose for what I'm trying to do, all of a sudden I said, you know what? For some reason, because I'm really buying into this purpose I put out for myself, it made me have boundaries against that fear, or more boundaries than before, because I still had the fear of doing it when we started doing the podcast, and even then, like, there are times before the show, depending, like, who the guest is or something like that, and then, like, how are we going to do the show, or if an equipment, we have to make sure the equipment is working a certain way, like, you don't want it to, like, mess up when... You see, if anyone noticed, for anyone watching the video version of this,
just like
Leon was like, "Yep, this has happened a few times." Yeah,
multiple times, too many times. My perfectionism was like, "Oh my!" You know what's so funny? Just a quick aside. Yesterday, I was like literally listening to the Glenn episode on like my bad headphones, and I couldn't hear. Like, I heard you a little bit, and I couldn't hear myself. I was like, "I can't believe this again!" I was like, "It doesn't work," but it was my bad headphones. That's why.
Oh,
yeah. No,
thank God.
It's like they're very low, but the thing is, like, you were audible and Glenn was audible. I wasn't at all, and I was like, "Oh my God, man!" I was like, every time there's got to be something.
Well, yeah. So
see, that's authenticity. I hope.
Yeah. No. 100%.
Drives me crazy.
So but the thing is, like, and then also us doing it every week, right? It's not just a matter of routine. I mean, it is, but it's not just that. I mean, there's something else that's like making us want to keep doing it.
Yeah, most
and it's not if you took our reasons away for wanting to do it, like, could you really do it? Like, for example, say, oh boy, I can't give this example. Somebody would take it the wrong way.
I got you.
Well, say somebody...
Okay.
Say somebody didn't want to do the show for the same reasons that we want to do the show. Okay. They're not as likely to come on every single week to do it.
I got you.
Yeah. To put it that way. And respect to all the people. I'm just trying to make a point of, like, how strong is, like, your purpose and what is your purpose also. Because even that person who it's not their purpose, it means they have another purpose. So that's why I'm not trying to put any bad stuff out there.
I got you.
But that was very careful. Yeah, you like how careful that was? Yeah. That was a very careful way of framing that. But yeah.
Motivation is important. By the way, I just wanted to really quickly tell you, so I think it would really be important for you to know. So you said before that, like, obviously, because you're like, oh no, I'm not an expert, right? So I don't know if, like, my opinion matters. Guess what? So because we're having this conversation, so the way I kind of structure my therapy is like, so I focus on the thought record, right? And then, like, in order to reduce anxiety, right? So, like, for hypothetically someone who has social anxiety. But then, like, on the other hand, right, we go to the behavioral strategies of, like, okay, now that you're not feeling anxious, what is it that you can do, right, to kind of, like, go forward in terms of whatever you want to accomplish, right? So you just taught me that there should actually be a second process, right, between the first and now the third. And the second process is actually what you just said, the motivator. And I actually, even though I know that anxiety and motivation are linked, for whatever reason, I didn't put that together in my sessions. So now I'm going to do that. I'm going to literally now focus on not only reducing anxiety, but increasing motivation. So thank you.
Well, yeah, and of course, no, because here's the thing, like, even if you take the force away that's restricting them, how Daniel Kahneman was saying, that's probably, it's extremely helpful anyway.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, like...
It could just be better, that's it. I think that...
For me, it worked out in the way where, like, when I was listening to that narrative of, like, what's your why and stuff,
right.
I did notice that when I found out what it was, it did help me to have boundaries towards behaviors that were keeping me from taking certain actions, right? And then...
Wait, what was that? Can you please say the last line again?
Having a purpose created boundaries against old behaviors that were keeping me from taking these new actions that I said to myself a million times I should be doing, but I wasn't doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, yeah, as far as New Year's resolutions goes, I suppose, and also I'm human. That's so we're all human, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, even when I say this kind of a thing, and I'm embarking on a new habit, and see, I've gotten into some defensive body language posture even as I did. I just caught that. Yeah, it's not easy to embark on a new goal. You'll notice that like you get it right a little bit, and then you go back, and then you kind of go back and you could get it right. So I mean, it's not perfect. Like even though we're talking about this and we're not speaking from like a pedestal, like it's a doable process, but it's not smooth. It can be messy. I don't want to say it's hard, because for somebody it might be hard. For somebody it might be easy as soon as they figure out what's their purpose and stuff. And it doesn't all come down to purpose. Sometimes if you could just break down all the reasons why what you're thinking could, how you could reframe what you're thinking, that's also a way to go about it.
Yeah. So then what's your why for time management?
My why for time management? So if we want to, here my thing is, if we want to do a very like a good show that gets more people invested into it, and actually there's more of a successful way to get certain ideas out there, or like knowing how to get more views, this way the ideas can be spread more, then investing in learning different like video editing, right? Like what Vegas does with our clips, for example. Learning how to do that myself, so this way it could be done on demand, like easily every week. And by the way, thank you, like for real, to Vegas, 100%. It's not, I'm not trying to say it's just like we ask a lot of him. You know, he has a lot of different things he's working on. So plus it's a good skill to learn, and that's like one thing. It's just video editing. Then there's other things, like what if I meet somebody, or what if I went to, let's say, a seminar, or maybe there's a video seminar that exists online about YouTube video creation, and it does exist, right? Maybe there's something about the YouTube algorithm that I'll learn that I didn't know before. Maybe there's a certain time of the day you're supposed to be posting. Maybe you need your video title to be this length long. Maybe you need certain keywords to be in there. Even if it's clickbaity, you need, the content should be real and authentic, but maybe you need some sort of clickbaity title. And it's not about sacrificing integrity for the clickbaity title. You just kind of need it to grab attention. Little things like that, and that's just for the show. Time management also in general, just to kind of have more respect for myself, in order to be someone who feels qualified to talk about the things we do on the show.
Right, so you're thinking about it more from a long-term perspective then.
Oh yeah,
okay,
of course, yeah.
Because that's, by the way, like the major reason why people like fail with New Year's resolutions, because it's short-term thinking, short-term gratification.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's like, oh, like that goal is so far away, right? So now what I should do is, I guess maybe this is a good segue into this conversation, right? Like, so how do we attain New Year's resolutions, right? And how do we fulfill them? I'm sure, like, probably if you guys are watching, you're going to ask, right? So the thing is, like, where the struggle is usually for people is literally with short-term and long-term thinking. So for long-term thinking, obviously, it's like, okay, here are my goals, right, for a kind of, whatever extended period of time, right? But I don't expect to achieve them anytime soon, right? Or at least if I do, it's going to be sort of very minimal progress, right? That hopefully add up to like these bigger, these bigger sort of long-term goals again. So the point is that for people, right, because they don't see short-term progress, or at least not enough of it, they're like, well, I'd rather do this thing instead, right, because it's going to make me happier now. So look, I'm not an expert on this, of course, but the idea is, it's like the simple way of doing it is to set yourself like rewards for short-term goals. To say like, if I do this, then I will give myself that, right? That way you will have like short-term gratification, obviously. But I find that what works even more, or could work in conjunction with those particular short-term rewards, is to focus on your values, right? Like what's important to you. So if like, and kind of in a nutshell, if let's say your goal is exercise, right? And your goal is like, I want to reach a particular, whatever body figure by X amount of time, right? So the idea is, it's like, okay, but like, do I really want to go to the gym, I don't know, 3-4 days a week in order to attain this body? I mean, in the beginning, New Year says yes, right? It's like, yeah, I absolutely want to do it. This is something I'm interested in. And then obviously when it comes down down to it and like a month in and you don't have it, and you're like, oh, do I really want to do it again? So the idea is to focus more on character, which is something that we've talked about, I think, ad nauseum at this point, is to focus on character more so than on the results. Because then what you're doing is you're saying, okay, by going to the gym, what sort of values and ideals am I living up to, right? I'm being persistent, I'm being resilient, because pretty much like my body's telling me, no, stop it, go do something else, go have fun, right? And I'm like, no, I'm gonna do this, right? Or rather, that's persistent. Resilient in the sense of when I do have setbacks and I do have a day where I have to miss the gym, right, then I can actually pick myself back up and then keep going, right? So I'm persistent, I'm determined, I'm resilient. What's another good one? I don't know, nothing comes.
I mean, you're following a discipline.
Yeah, disciplined, right? Pretty much sort of structured, right? So structure is important for me to sort of set a goal and be able to tell myself that I fulfilled it on that particular day. So the idea is that if you're living up to your values, right? So you can set rewards too, right? It's not one or the other. So you can set short-term rewards, and then you can ask yourself, how am I living up to my values, right? So if you're doing that, what it is that essentially it sort of prolongs the potential. It doesn't, yeah. I guess it actualizes the potential and then prolongs the amount of time you actually spend going toward your goal, your long-term goal. And what's so interesting, people are like, sometimes they think like, okay, the gym itself is actually what's important, but if you think about it, like, let's say from an evolutionary psychology perspective, right? So it's not that being fit is in itself the end goal, right? It is the end goal, or it could be, but the idea is it's not the sort of the thing in itself that gets us what we want. It's what it represents. So it's like, if being fit, right? If let's say having, I don't know, a graduate degree, doing a podcast, right? Whatever it is, right? If it represents characteristics to people that they want to be with in terms of any type of relationship, then what you're doing is you're already manifesting those characteristics before actually hitting the peak of that symbolism, right? Which is going to show people like, oh, this is that person. So it's like, if you're living up to that character, that already in itself could be enough to sustain you. Again, you can have short-term rewards if you want to. It's not either or, right? So the idea is, if you're living up to those characteristics, right, and what the goal is to sort of be at the peak level of it, where everybody can see that you're living up to characteristics, and you can remind yourself you're already doing the thing that you want to be doing, or you already, at least to some extent, right, can, at least from your perspective, you can already perceive yourself, right, the way other people will perceive you, that, right? Well, at least partially, right? So they might think like, oh man, like, wow, this person like looks really good, or whatever, if that's what you're going for. But also the idea is that then they're going to think this person is really determined, this person is really disciplined, this person is really resistant, they're persistent, they're hardworking, etc. And you can already embody all of those characteristics before reaching, physically what that means, or that peak shape.
Absolutely. Like some of the things that you were saying there, I was like, shit, I want to go to the gym today.
Let's do it.
No, I was going to go anyway. But
Okay.
like, yeah. There were times, like, especially when I was trying to do the whole, build it as a habit to go to the gym. I actually framed it in my head this way. Every day that I went to the gym, if I even went, forgetting if I did whatever my workout's supposed to be, if I went, it's a win.
Yes.
That's how I would do it. I'd be like, okay.
Why? Which values were embodied there?
Just more like being disciplined and following a routine. Yeah. So like for me, one of the things I struggled with
persistent.
was... Oh yeah, persistence, yeah. Oh yeah, no, well...
Determined.
Persistence I had.
Well, no, but I'm saying it was manifested in you going to the gym at that point, where you really didn't want to, so determined, right?
I mean,
how conscious... modest guy.
No, it's not even that. It's like how conscious of it was I. Right?
No, I'm not saying you were. I'm just asking, like now, when you're thinking about it.
No, sure. I mean... yeah, for me, it was more like... It was just more...
Don't go on about yourself now.
Shit. Damn it. I started scratching
I know.
my head. I'm like, what's good?
It's like Alen gets a little praise, and it's like, oh my god.
Oh, guys. No. I mean, like... But here's the thing. Like, yeah, it's what kept me going. Like, even if I had to look at it from the short term, if I went and I felt like, okay, I win for going, I feel satisfied for the day. Yeah. I actually couldn't feel, like, because I used to feel like, well, actually, it's not even to say I wasn't feeling anxiety at that time either or anything like that, but I had, like, anxiety about, like, where was my life going? What am I doing? Am I, following my dreams or not? To what degree am I? How much time am I wasting? All that kind of stuff. Yep. What could I be doing that I'm, like, afraid to do? And I keep telling myself, like, I should be doing it, but I'm not doing it. and it's like all these things building up. So when I had like one particular activity, like the gym, that I was being very persistent with, and going to, and then thinking like, okay, it's a win if I do this. Well, one thing that was cool was when I had proved to myself that like I could actually go almost every day there, and stick to a certain routine and try to get like stronger or faster, or just even just to get some kind of activity in for the day. It made me feel like I can do other things in my life.
Right.
And then that actually gave me more confidence by focusing on one particular thing.
Right.
So
Is it because of the way you saw yourself through it? Like how what
it was more like I had trouble keeping anything routine.
Right.
All.
So it was the way you saw yourself in it.
Yeah.
Because now you're like, oh, I'm disciplined, at least to some extent. Cool.
Yeah. I didn't even say it exactly like that. I was just more like, oh, thank God. Okay, maybe I actually could do another thing and try to do it as many days in a row as possible, and maybe create some kind of new habit or something.
Yeah.
I did it with, but the one was easy. This was easier to do because I was in a dark place at this time. You know, like gratitude practice and all that.
Yep.
Like saying, I would do like a thing like of 10 things I'm grateful for in the day, and I would say I'm grateful for X because of Y. And then like, and I always notice that whenever you say the reason why, it cements it for some reason more in your head than if you just said I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for this. Because I don't know, it adds like an extra second of processing, like that actually makes you pretty much start to feel the actual gratitude.
I hear you.
And then doing that for like 30 days in a row, let's say, I had a complete like different experience of my surroundings.
A shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And so, just obviously, kind of for time, right? Do you want to talk about how we'll actualize our New Year's resolutions?
Oh, I mean, we have good amount of time.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think that would be like still a pretty lengthy topic.
Oh no, absolutely.
Them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just in case. I was like, what's he thinking? So whatchamacallit, how to actualize?
Yes. So what are you thinking? Like, how do you actualize being better at time management? Like, what concrete goals are you gonna set?
So for example, if it's the weekend, right, and I have, you know, of course I want to set time to hang out with my friends, right? That's one particular thing. What I'll do is maybe maybe Friday and Saturday, or whatever, maybe just 2 of the 3 days there. I would hang out with friends. I would dedicate it to that. Not dedicate, but you know, a certain amount of time. And then maybe one particular day, I would set out time to really dive deep into something, like for hours on end.
Okay, so just be careful, because like when another reason why people fail with their goals is when they're very vague about them. Where it's like, oh, well, I'll set like a particular day aside for whatever, right? And then it's like the day never gets set, and then you're like, oh, I guess that's...
Well, for instance, like for me, my day would be today, for example. So, for example, after we do the podcast...
Right, so Sundays.
Usually.
Okay.
Usually it would be Sundays. But it depending on how the hanging out works for that weekend, I may adjust. Like there were times I said to myself I was going to go to the gym every day, but then maybe something is sore or I have to go...
And you're not supposed to, though. You're not supposed to go every day.
The reason... Yeah, but I didn't... What I did every day, though, wasn't...
I hear you.
Wasn't something that would mess you up. In terms of... it wasn't like I was doing weightlifting.
You walk in the door, you work out.
It was like a lot of cardio stuff, a lot of push-ups, and it's not like I was doing any extra weight, so it's not like I would get sore. So because that was something actually I could manage doing every single day without any kind of repercussion. I didn't work out to the point of killing myself or whatever. I did make errors with that back in the day, but that's a different story. Also, I went every day because it actually made it into a habit for me. I couldn't do the whole 3 to 4 days a week thing because the amount of days I didn't go, I'd be like, oh, well, I didn't go yesterday. So my mind worked like that.
Yeah, but that's why, like, I guess experts on this topic would argue, like, to have concrete days. Like, concrete days and even probably concrete time slots for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so time management.
Time management. Yeah. So, yeah, it's you see, you can hear the hesitation in my voice. It goes back to what I said earlier. Like, I'm not perfect with it. You could hear the like little bits of vagueness and hesitation in my voice.
That's what the vagueness is. It is hesitation.
But I'll tell you this: since the new year started, I have actually made more time to like check out more videos or try to practice like some kind of skill, like with the video editing the other day. That was New Year's Day, for example. Today it's gonna be more of that. And actually, I haven't found something that I'm gonna. It's either read a book, or it's gonna be maybe like a video seminar type of deal.
Okay.
We'll see. That's the part where I'm vague, right? Fair enough. But will it be set out to do something in terms of learning? 100%.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm like that to a degree because that was my style before. It's probably not the best. It's definitely not the best style. Just when I had more free time back in the day. Still, I would waste a whole bunch of hours in the day, but at least 3 of those hours or something like that, because of how much time there was, I would easily be able to do some kind of learning. Because of the lack of time now, it's on the surface it seems tougher. So I'm just applying that vague thing of having a whole free day, but then making sure that, because of the feeling I have in my body of like I need to do something, I will definitely attempt to learn something.
Okay, cool.
So I understand how vague it is, but
I hear you. Maybe it'll work still.
it works.
Yeah, because here's the thing. It's like this is not concrete, right? Just the ideas. It's not black and white. Again, like I think I obviously said before. So it's like what you're doing is when you're not being vague and when you're being concrete, you're just increasing the chances that you'll follow through. So it's not like you won't follow through. You can be vague and follow through. It's just that it's more likely that you'll follow through if you're concrete. If you're like, no, this is what I'm doing and I'm doing it at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess I'll flip this a little bit.
Let's do it. I was waiting for it.
How are you gonna make your resolutions?
All right. So the way I'm thinking of it, so it's not gonna be as concrete as I'm gonna do it at this particular time, obviously, because like, oh no, I'm gonna be authentic between the hours of 3 and 4, and then
it feels better being on this side now. I'm just kidding.
Right. So all right, what I'm gonna do. So most of my struggle was literally just So I mean, this is something we talked about. Obviously, it's literally just expressing my emotions. Right, outside of like anger. So which is why I'm like, oh, I'm so angry, and I could talk about that easily. So for me, what I'm gonna try is I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna remind myself, and I'm gonna do it. Not even try as best as I can. So I'm gonna kind of set a higher standard for myself. So regardless of the environment, right, whether let's say, I don't know, whatever, in session, whether I'm around you guys, whatever it is, right? So, wow, man, damn it. I could have done it this morning too. Okay, whatever. So for the future now. So whenever I'm angry with someone, right, rather than just saying like I'm angry with you, because technically it's not so much that I'm angry, right? So for me, so look, you could definitely be angry with people, right? So anger is pretty nuanced. So there's sort of justifiable anger where you're like really angry for, I mean, I guess it can also be both, right? Where you're angry for some sort of injustice that was done toward you, right? But for the most part, and even that sort of anger is I would say that anger is even still kind of cover, right? So pretty much all anger, I could be wrong and I might have to reconceptualize this later, but whatever, I'm going with it. So anger is pretty much a cover for hurt or fear, right? For the most part, or some combination of the two. So it's like Len said last week, right? Like with Ali, it's a way for you to redirect that fear into an emotion that you can control and you can use, right? Because if I'm angry, right? If I'm angry, now I can kind of lash out at you, right? And I could sort of try as best as I can to reduce my fear, right, through lashing out. So like getting you to run away, so right? So what I'm gonna do is, in terms of authenticity, I'm gonna, before reacting with anger, right, and saying like, oh, like you did this thing or whatever it was, right, I'm going to ask myself, okay, what am I really feeling, right? Am I hurt by something this person said or did? Am I sad about it? Am I afraid of this person for whatever reason? I'm afraid of what they're going to say, or I'm afraid of what they're going to do, or am I afraid of like whatever's going to happen in terms of my circumstances? And I'm just going to be honest about that. So rather than saying I'm really mad at you because of this thing, or I'm really angry about this particular thing, I'm just going to say, and this is what's hard for me, right, to say like, no, you really hurt my feelings. You made me sad when you said or did that thing. Or you hurt my feelings when, I don't know, when you told me you couldn't come on our podcast. I don't know, whatever it is, right? I would be like, this is why, right? Because I felt this way. I felt like unimportant to you, right? Or I felt like I didn't matter to you. Because that's the truth, right? But it comes out for me, right? Because kind of, whatever, and I don't mean for this to be a cop-out.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah, I know.
really
It's so hard for me, man. It's so hard for me because usually what I do is like, what do you mean you didn't do this thing? You said you were gonna do this thing, right? So I'm gonna try not to do that. I'm gonna try to be like, look. And this is literally, by the way, what I teach my clients, FYI. This is how hard it is for me. So I would say, look, you did this particular thing, and this is the way it made me feel. So when you did this thing, right, it really hurt my feelings, and it made me feel like I wasn't important to you, or you didn't care about me, etc. So obviously, what happens is if you're vulnerable, it'll get the other person to react much better than it would if you're just like accusing them and blaming them of whatever. So that's it. That's my goal. Try as best as I can.
I mean, that's really good. Honestly, I don't remember. I haven't heard you speak like this before.
See?
Yeah, that's pretty.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, to stay on, how in general to keep with resolutions or even just goals in general. Again, the whole resolutions thing is a little. It's cliche, right? Yeah. So if somebody's like listening or watching and they're like, "Come on, man, what's this New Year's resolution shit?" Come on. I'll be like, okay, actually, I can see that. But either way, you're still essentially saying the same thing. Like, I still want to accomplish some kind of goal and all that.
Oh, and also just I think the New Year's resolution thing, it's just a way for people to sort of like it's a motivator, like an extra motivator. Like these are goals that people would have like probably otherwise, but they're like, oh, because like we have this New Year's resolution idea added to it, now it just motivates me or try.
Yeah, it's a nice structure. Yeah, it is pretty nice. Yeah, like there were times that helped me to be like, oh, okay, it's the beginning of a new year,
right?
So I'm gonna try to do something every single day or as much as possible, something like that. And it's definitely worked more in recent years. So take it for what it is. It's definitely a good thing.
Yeah, most definitely. And the thing is, like, I think it's cliched for a reason. Like, I mean, maybe sometimes people don't know how to fulfill their resolutions. Maybe sometimes they don't try hard enough. That's granted, right? But I think it's cliched for a reason because I think all of us are on the road, or at least want to be on the road of personal development. So.
Even if somebody's not, or somebody doesn't want to develop themselves, because again, even that is a cliche for some people.
Right.
Like here's the thing, the reason why I'm talking like this is because I want to break down because we have such a wide kind of audience that we could talk to, right? In terms of like different dispositions, different. Just views on life. Like for example, somebody might totally love being authentic, being present to the moment and all that, and they're like, but what is this self-help side of it, right? Another person might love self-help, and so they love every single thing that we're talking about. But essentially we're all kind of just trying to do well for ourselves and also for other people. Different people have depends, like the scale is different for other people. Sometimes they're really for other people. Sometimes it's more for themselves. Whatever.
Can I ask you a favor then? So can you hold me accountable in the future? So if I ever get mad at you, or if I ever get mad at someone in the group, right, can you kind of call me out on it and ask me what I'm really feeling?
Sure.
Okay. Damn, this is gonna be tough.
But when was the last time that happened? Well, no, let me not do that.
Literally today.
Today?
Yeah.
Because the guest thing?
Yeah.
It's fine.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, so in the future, if that were to ever happen, right, can you call me out on it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to hold you accountable in any way?
No.
Okay, I got you.
Yep.
I feel
I'm going to hold myself accountable.
I feel that.
No, I'm just fine. I mean, no, I know what you mean. I've had moments where I'd be like, there's something I'm trying to do, and I keep noticing that I keep going back into the automaticity of just like, I'm back in my old habit. And I have asked someone before to kind of remind me, like, all the time about something that I'm trying to do that I know is good for me, that I have like intense resistance towards doing.
Yeah.
So, fine.
You don't have to. It's your call. I'm just asking.
No, it's cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, how?
Why not?
What are you looking for?
I don't know. Just every single day.
Every day.
Every day. You have to say good morning. No, I'm just playing. No. Just like...
Oh, you gotta tell them the joke now.
Oh, the good morning?
Yeah, the good morning. Because what are they talking about?
When we first started doing the podcast, something like that, we would just start talking like out of nowhere in the morning about like how to do it. And this is like... And we're even like... We know each other, but like we're getting to know each other even more, like even better at that time. So like the conversation would just start from like already as if it was in the middle of a conversation about the podcast. I'm like, okay, but it's the morning right now. Can we insert some like
you asked me to say good morning, and then I trolled you on it.
Yeah, no, because the idea was I was just trying to say like let's get some banter first. Like, oh, hey, what's up? Something like that. And then bring in the show. When the show was brought up immediately, at least in those early times, I was like, I don't, it's weird. I'm not, I don't know, I couldn't engage.
And then remember, I would troll you. You would hit me up at night and ask me something. I'm like, Alan, you didn't even fucking say good evening.
You didn't say good evening. You didn't say good morning. Yeah. So I forgot where...
But yeah, though, so in terms of holding you accountable.
Yeah, I mean...
Here's the thing, man. If it's my thing, it's going to be less likely that you'll react well to it.
So, here's the thing. It's definitely good to have someone hold you accountable. Like, actually, there's this thing... Tim Ferriss, at one point, he wrote this book called The 4-Hour Body. Mm-hmm. Right? And he had a whole bunch of books called The 4-Hour Work Week, 4-Hour... I think it's over there. Yeah, 4-Hour Chef. And then Tools of Titans is over there. And Tribe of Mentors, whatever. Yeah. So anyway, point is, when he wrote The 4-Hour Body, there was some sort of site that he recommended for people who are trying to lose weight or work out. Mm-hmm. And it was like something where you put down a certain amount of money, and if you don't follow your weight goal, and they hold your money, and if you don't follow your weight goal, and provide proof of it or something like that, then they keep your money. Yeah. So you had to create some sort of you would lose something if you didn't follow your goal. Mm-hmm. So I mean, and that held you accountable. Mm-hmm. So I like the whole holding you accountable thing. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I don't know. Every once in a while, I'd just be like, so are you? I don't know. Are you making time to read or learn about video editing or YouTube related stuff?
Okay. Or I can just ask you what you have learned, like in the week. How about that? Would you want that instead?
Sure. What did we learn today, guys? No,
give me rundown, book reports.
Give me a book report. Sure.
I love how hesitant you are. You're like, oh, resistance.
Yeah, because I'd rather just kind of hold myself accountable. Okay. And also, anytime I mess up, it would just be like.
But Alan, you can't. I don't have to do this. You don't. You could just say no. It's your call.
Yeah, I know.
Because I'm asking you to hold me accountable, so that's for me. That's not for you.
Yeah, but you see how much resistance I have towards it. I'm catching it, and then I'm thinking that's even more of a reason to do it.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also trying to be a model for anyone who's listening. If they're as resistant as I am, right now, to do the thing that you're resisting.
You feel so uncomfortable right now.
You see it. I'm looking down.
Oh yeah. You're doing all sorts of stuff, moving around.
Yeah. So okay, I'm down.
Okay,
this.
Cool.
All
right. Every morning, I will say good morning, and then I will ask you what you've learned the day before. I'm kidding.
It's fine. Yeah. So yeah, we could do that.
All right. Cool. What was the other goal? The other resolution? Time management and.
No, meditation. Try to actually do meditation.
That one you're on your own.
Yeah, no, because I in a sense do it. Let's say on the train on the way to work. Yep. I don't close my eyes or anything like that.
That would be weird.
You could close.
People sleep. That's true.
You can look as if you're sleeping or something.
Yeah.
But
Goosefraba.
I would do things like I would just look around, kind of feel my body or my hands, and then when you start to concentrate on certain parts of your body, it feels a little bit. It's not warmer, but you just kind of feel. Attention there, let's put it that way. So yeah, I would do something like that. So I start to feel my body more, and I just kind of look around, and I don't think so much because I'm more into feeling and putting attention in certain parts of my body. So you could say I meditate technically when I do that, but I'm trying to do another version of it where let's say I'm at home and 20 minutes of meditation. Like legit sit down for 20 minutes in a comfortable sort of position. Ideally, you should be supposedly like sitting with your like back straight up, hands on your, not your knees, but like on your thighs.
You mean the opposite of what I'm doing now?
Yeah, but then they also say, or whatever position's comfortable for you.
I hear you.
So it might not matter necessarily.
All right.
So I want to do that version and try the whole 20 minutes a day thing and actually set aside that time.
I hear you.
I did it recently I did it on New Year's Day, and that's it, actually. So that's me being honest. I didn't do it every single day. I'm going to do it today because I'll put it this way, I feel bad about not having done it. That's the best I can say, I suppose. I don't know. What do you have to say to that? Is there some other way I should be thinking about it? Or should we use what we talked about?
What?
What's my purpose for meditating?
No, yeah, so that, the motivator, but then by the way, also in terms of, so again, going back to literally our second episode and using the thought record. So the thing is, like, when somebody's really sort of anxious or sad about something, like, let's say themselves, right? Like, I'm really sad and angry at myself for not, meditating X amount of time. So, and then if you view yourself as, let's say, a failure, right? So, I am a failure. What's going to happen is your sort of depression, right? Your anger is going to be through the roof, right? Paralyzing. There's nothing you can really do with that, right? Because again, something I'm gonna assume I said this, right? I don't want to say for sure because if somebody goes back to the episode, they're like, oh, he never said that. Whatever, maybe I said it. So what happens is if somebody views themselves as a failure, what happens is the task is either insurmountable, or not even the task, right? Overcoming that, whatever tasks you want to do to overcome that belief, right? Or insurmountable, or I guess the belief is insurmountable because you're like, oh, I'm a failure. This is just an inherent part of who I am. Or conversely, you think that it's so difficult to try to overcome, right, that you're not even going to start. So for you, if you're sort of devastated by your, kind of your setback, what happens is you're not going to try, right? You're going to be like, oh my God, like this is it. I can't do this. People tell themselves all the time, right? But if you tell yourself, okay, like, no, I made a mistake and I fucked up, right? I failed, right? This was an instance of my failing. I wanted to meditate today, but I didn't, right? So I'm angry at myself and I'm sad, I guess, with myself or about it, right? So if instead of being at 90, you're like at a 60, right? So you're angry and you're sad. Then what you could do is you can tell yourself, okay, how do I now use these emotions? Because emotions aren't necessarily positive or negative. It just literally matters how intense they are, right? If they're so intense because they're connected to your belief of yourself as a failure, worthless, etc., right, then they're bad. Meaning that they're stifling or paralyzing. If they're positive, or rather, if they're connected to reality in the sense of your interpretation is I failed at this, then what you're going to do is you're going to try to problem solve. You're going to ask yourself, okay, now I'm going to use these emotions because I don't want to ever feel them again, right? You're going to obviously, but that's the idea, the conception. So what do I do next time to make sure that I don't feel sad and I don't get angry at myself for failing to meditate? And then that's kind of it, right? And you're going to sort of plan it out. And you're going to be like, okay, next time I'm going to do this. And then as a sort of motivator, you can have a million motivators, obviously, if you want. But one of them could be like, oh, hey, I don't want to feel angry and sad at myself for not meditating today.
Yeah, it definitely works. I mean, I think it's funny if you, especially in terms of meditating, if you try to beat yourself up.
Right.
For not meditating.
For not being still.
Yeah. Or like one thing that happens a lot, or happens definitely to people who meditate, and it's happened to me too. It's all of a sudden like you're chilling out, you're breathing, you're feeling your body, all that. All of a sudden, you sort of drift off. You start to think about something, and then you catch yourself. Oh, I'm thinking about something. Stop! You're not supposed to be thinking about something. And then you go back to not thinking.
Right.
But from that, the emotional momentum, or causes a little heightened feeling of stress. Like you just kind of feel it a little.
Right. It's a lot of the pressure you put on yourself.
Yeah, you feel. Yeah, you feel that for a second, and it just takes. It's a weird paradoxical thing that takes you out of the meditation for a sec, and you could go back into it. But what's hilarious is like that tends to happen, and it's a hilarious little paradox. Like you shouldn't even have resistance against your. Like if you catch yourself, you're just supposed to stop and just continue instead of just be like, go back to no thinking, and then actually going back to no thinking. It's an interesting process, but you get better.
I think what you're saying, the idea is not to put like a lot of pressure on yourself, just to try to do it, and then if you can't, then try to do it again.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. You just like course correct. Like
Yes.
oops. Okay.
Yeah.
Course correct.
Right. Mindfulness.
Skip the
Yeah.
the reaction
Mm-hmm.
if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right then. Wow. How long do you think of this? How long have we gone for? on this
No,
one?
yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
All right. Anything else we should cover?
Well, I'll tell you this. I hope everyone has a happy New Year. I know this came out like how many days after the New Year?
Let's say the 5th. Yeah.
It's the 5th. So 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
But still, like, to everyone, good luck on your New Year's resolutions.
And we hope some of these strategies have helped you guys in some way.
Yeah, hopefully. Please let us know in the comments section if any of this was helpful. If you have any questions, anything like that. We might try something in the near future where maybe on Facebook or Twitter or even Instagram we might put out an Ask Me Anything sort of post, and if you guys want, you can engage in that, and then we can have sort of like a little mini conversation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what would be really cool? So, if obviously whoever feels comfortable with this, guys, in the YouTube section or the comment section of YouTube. So, if you guys have any other sort of strategies for us in terms of helping us accomplish our goals, then please leave them for us. I would love to hear what you guys think.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
All right.
So,
we've done it.
Yep. So anyway, as we usually say, follow us at Seize the Moment Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. So on Twitter it's Seize_podcast. On Instagram and Facebook it's at Seize the Moment Podcast. And yeah, like and subscribe. Hit the bell. And see you guys next episode for episode 36.
Episode 55.